Hi, you guys, and we're continuing on with Women's History Month with What Would She Do? 25 true stories of trailblazing rebel women. And even though we didn't have school on Friday, we read about Elena Piscopia. Remember, she was a super student. Today, take out my bookmark and put on my glasses. Catherine the Great, Russian ruler. Ooh. She might have been great, but she wasn't called Catherine, and she didn't come from Russia either. Catherine the Great was actually named Sophie, and she was born in Prussia, which is where my family is originally from. An old kingdom that included part of a modern-day Poland. A Prussian princess, her route to the Russian throne was complicated, difficult, and bloody, but Catherine cleverly overcame all obstacles, including her own husband, to get there. Then, once she was empress, she set about making sure that no one would forget her reign. Look at that crown. Wow. Name Sophie Friederike August von Anhalt-Zerbst, born May 2nd, 1729, and she died November 17th, 1796. She was 67 years old when she died. Her nationality, Prussian. Profession, Empress of Russia. Sophie von Anhalt-Zerbst was not the boy that her parents had wished for. Disappointed, they left the young princess's upbringing to a governess who taught her French, German, religion, history, music. But by the time she was 15, the highly educated Sophie had become super useful to her family. They were royal, but they were also poor. If Sophie could marry a really important royal, then her own family would be rich and famous too. When Sophie was 15, the Russian Empress invited her to visit. It was 1744, and her nephew, the Grand Duke Peter, who was also her heir, needed a wife. Sophie didn't like Peter much, but she did like the idea of wearing a Russian crown. And then there was also the problem of religion. Sophie was not a member of the Russian Orthodox Church. Even though her father objected, Sophie converted to Peter's faith and changed her name to Catherine. And in 1745 they were married. But it wasn't a happy marriage. It was 8 years before they had a son, and even then it was rumored that Peter was not the father. When Empress Elizabeth died in 1762, her nephew became Emperor Peter III. At once he upset Russians and his very own wife with his new policies, and some people came up with a plan to overthrow him. When Peter discovered the plan, Catherine stepped in and had her husband arrested. She forced him to sign a document of abdication, and Catherine II became in charge of Russia. Her husband was later killed. The Russian throne was a tricky place to be. Catherine didn't want to be overthrown like her own husband, so she first made sure that she had the support of other nobles and of the military. Next on her agenda was to reform. She tackled the old-fashioned legal system, changing it so that everyone received equal treatment under the law. She put the emphasis more on preventing crime rather than punishing criminals afterward. She also made it free to go to school and wrote books that supported the education system. And because she loved the arts, she supported those too, especially especially theater, opera, ballet, music, and painting. Money was lavished on the city of St. Petersburg, which became known as a cultural hub in all of Europe. Meanwhile, the Russian Empire grew massively, but there were many revolts. The biggest was the Pugachev's Rebellion of 1773, which lasted to 1775. It was supported by thousands of serfs, another word for slaves, and peasants. The Russian army eventually crushed the rebellion, but it did make Catherine change her mind about equality and give nobles even more power over the poor to keep them under control. Some say Catherine was an enlightened leader. Others say that she was way too severe. But either way, she remained on the throne for 34 years until her death at the age of 67. What would Catherine do? You've had it with the class WhatsApp group. Everyone's picking on you, and you can't even leave the group because they'll make fun of you behind your back. What would Catherine the Great do? Answer: Catherine the Great wouldn't give a fig. Seriously, people schemed behind her back her whole life. And where did it get her? Why, onto the Russian throne. That's where. So she would leave the group, she would block the contacts, and she would know that bullies do what they do to get a reaction. And if they don't get a reaction, they'll stop. Then she'd tell a teacher about the WhatsApp group, so the bullies would think twice before doing it to anyone else. Quote from Catherine the Great herself: be gentle, be humane, accessible, compassionate, and liberal-minded. Behave so that the kind love you, the evil fear you, and all respect you. It's a lot of words, isn't it? And that's it for Catherine the Great today. And when we come back tomorrow, we'll have Ada Lovitch, the computer whiz kid. All right, I hope you are enjoying this series of What Would She Do? 25 trailblazing rebel women. Bye-bye.